My name is Gaby Dijkstra. I am living in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, for many, many years. I really love the city, which is quite funny because it's, as you might know, below sea level. And in my free time, I like to be way higher up than sea level. What else? I'm 37. I'm a freelancer, but I'm also a researcher. I don't have a very linear career path, but my background is in sports management. So I was taught to deal with everything in the sports industry, how to organize events, how to set up a club, for example, or how to run a more commercial sports business. But I found the sport for society most interesting. What I mean by that is how can we use sports as a means for society to help tackle some challenges in society. So that's a little bit about my background. At the moment, I am also a PhD candidate at Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University, also in the Netherlands. And I had the opportunity to really design my own study project. And I study the role of gender in extreme environments. What do I mean by that? The role of gender is I look at the constructs of gender. So gender is a social construct. We have many social constructs in this world. Some are super helpful for daily life, right? It helps structure daily life. It helps to give us rules and clarity and what we can expect from one another. For example, traffic rules, social constructs. Then there are also some social constructs that are helpful in the workplace, but not always helpful for you as an individual, such as a deadline. Somebody decides you have a deadline and you need to work with it. Okay, it's really nice if everybody else keeps up with the deadlines, but sometimes I want to have an exception, right? I guess a lot of people will recognize that one. But then there's also social constructs that can be very harmful because it limits us in who we are and what we want to be, how we are allowed to behave, basically. And one of those constructs is gender. So the construct of gender means that as a society, we have decided what we think is appropriate behavior for men and women based on our gender. So not based on our sex, and it has nothing to do with our biological features. It has everything to do with human behavior and our expectations of those. That is what I'm super fascinated about, right? I'm a woman. I identify as a woman, and what we say often in PhD world is like you want to study something that's interesting to you, right? Because it takes all of your brain, basically. So you really need to get into it. And for me, it was really interesting to look at gender because I really don't get it. I really don't get this construct. I really find it fascinating why we have these rules and that we just made up ourselves. And I don't know why. So the concept of gender is everywhere around us, right? In our private life, in our organizational life, everywhere. And I got most confronted with it in my private life, which I mean more my mountain private life. So I like all kinds of outdoor sports, but I'm most happy when I'm in the mountains. I like to go hiking, long distance hiking. I like to go rock climbing, ice climbing, alpine style climbing, mountaineering. Most recently, I started with paragliding. So everything mountains is really exciting. However, or not even however, but I found myself most of the time surrounded by men in these environments, which is great because I love men. They're good fun, good company. But I always thought like what's going on here? Why are not so many women around me? Is this something weird that I am doing? Shouldn't I be here? Or no, I should be here because it's awesome, but why are all my other girlfriends? And that started me to think about this construct of gender a little bit more. Just in my private, in the back of my brain, sometimes like, hey, what's going on here? And I saw that sometimes if I would pursue a sport, I get criticized by it, by other people, and mostly not because they're mean or something, but they were very, how do you say, worried about me? Like, oh, it's so dangerous. Should you do that? Or are you sure? Shouldn't you try something else? Can't you just go, I don't know, play volleyball? And I'm really short, so no, that didn't help me. So in the back of my mind, this was going on for many years. And in the meantime, due to my work, I started working way more in leadership projects, and mostly then what they called female leadership projects and girl empowerment projects, all those in the area of sport for development, right? So what I said before, if I would go use sports as a means to tackle some challenges, and then it would be often like one-offs through empowerment project. We take a lot of women to go visit a basketball game, or we would provide a different sports project in their own neighborhood where they would normally not be allowed to play outside, something like that. Or in an area that is a little bit more poor, how could we introduce them to sports? That was my job for a long time, which I loved. And I think there's a lot of value in these projects, and they should be around. They're good. It's great for the people that are part of those. But after a couple of years, I personally got a little bit frustrated by this because, like I said before, I didn't get it. I didn't get why I got back into all those projects time and again without seeing a different outcome. And then I figured there's something bigger going on here. It's not about we need to help women to become the same as men and we give them the same rules that they should live up to, and then it will all be fine. That's how the industry is made sometimes. And I got a little bit frustrated. Well, not a little bit. I got hugely frustrated with that because I figured that's not fair and that's not how it should be. So then I figured, well, if I really don't understand something, I need to go back to school. I need to learn more about it. And that's a very long story. That's how I started my PhD, because I wanted to learn more about the construct of gender. And then to make it even more interesting for myself, I wanted to see, okay, how does this play out in extreme environments? What's going on in extreme environments? And what I mean by those is in the mountains, for example, in areas where we do not hide behind a laptop, where we cannot hide behind fancy clothes or an office door or a name tag or anything like that. But when stuff get a bit more raw and uncomfortable, I wanted to see what the construct of gender is doing then. Because I think in those circumstances, which we heard a lot on other podcast episodes of your podcast as well, right? So many women experience so many awesome things because it does something to you when you're in the outdoors in an uncomfortable situation. You achieve different things because you cannot behind something and behind somebody else or some whatever social construct. So I decided. My supervisor asked me, "What if there's no obstacles in the world? If there's time, money, everything? Don't worry about anything. Where would you like to go for your PhD?" And then I said right away, "Well, then it's easy. Then I go back to the Himalaya where I worked before, where I traveled before, because I saw some things there, and I really want to get into it. I really want to look at the role of gender in that specific area." And 6 months later, I got on a plane to Kathmandu.
Let's dig into that in a little bit more detail because you've got some wonderful stats on your website. So you spent 191 days in the field, 132 days on a mountain. You have done 70 nights above 5,364 meters. You've done 10 nights above 6,400 meters. But you've also been conducting your research and doing interviews while you're out in Nepal. So take us back to Nepal for your PhD fieldwork. What did that look like? How was that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really funny to think of it because as a year ago, as of right now, I was still there. I was still living in this tent, which was awesome. So I decided to go for my fieldwork to the Himalaya to basically see, experience, live through a full climbing season. And that means roughly from autumn all the way to the end of every season. So it's about 9 months out of the year, there's climbing going on in the Himalaya. Most people know it only from the Everest season, the spring season, which is running right now. But there's here almost year round, except for the monsoon, there is commercial climbing going on. So I wanted to see that. I wanted to experience it and with a special focus. So not just go and climb. I mean, of course I did because it was fun, but I wanted to look at the role of gender in this industry, because it's a huge industry. There's a lot of money going on. There's a lot of people working in this industry. And I wanted to understand what the role of gender means for people working in this industry. And by people working in this industry, I mean mountain workers. Most people know them as Sherpas. However, I don't think that's the correct term. Yes, there's a lot of people from the Sherpa ethnicity working in the mountains historically, and they have done amazing things, and they're still to this day. Yet, not everybody who's working on the mountain belongs to this ethnicity. So there's many others in Nepal as well, and I only studied from the Nepal side, right? So not from the Chinese side or the Pakistani side of the Himalaya. So I wanted to see, okay, what does it mean for all the people working there? Because I'm from the business school, right? So I still have a focus of organizations and what does it mean for organizations. I'm not an anthropologist in that sense. So I went there and I basically did three things. So I was there all those days, you said. Luckily, I was able to be in the mountains most of the time. And the first episode of my research was taking part in a commercial climbing expedition myself. And I climbed a mountain which is called Amadablam. It's 6,812 meters, to be exact. It's a beautiful mountain. She is super steep and she looks like the queen of the Himalaya right there. It's in the Everest region as well, the Khumbu region. So everybody who ever walked towards Everest Base Camp also walked along Amadablam. So I joined in. I hired a commercial climbing expedition organization, a Nepalese one, and I just joined in. And what we call in research is like a ethnography. So I did a participant observation study, meaning I lived through everything myself. So I was a participant and an observant. I climbed. And every day I would write in my journal multiple times. I would make field notes. I'll take hundreds of pictures and videos and try to capture everything that was going on and also climb at the same time. That was part one, which will be also my first study of the PhD. So I'll talk about what it means to be a client in the industry, which I was, and how you work together with your mountain guide or your assistance guide. Like I said, the Sherpa. And how does that work? What's happening on the mountain? How is life in base camp? And then you move towards higher camps. You go on a rotation. You struggle because it's high altitude. It's cold. It's uncomfortable. You also need to climb pretty technically at Amadablam. How does that work? I really wanted to see every part of it. I was lucky because in mountaineering, there's a huge part of luck necessary to stay safe, to stay healthy, to also have a good weather window. And I was lucky that I made it to the summit and back down again. That's why we're talking right now. And that was part one of my research. Then I went back to Kathmandu because I had to recover a little bit. I lost a lot of weight and I was just tired and I needed to rest and eat and also get my head around, okay, what does this mean for research? I did this first thing now, which was 1 month roughly. I acclimatized. I know what's going on for a little bit right now. How can I now make best use of the rest of my month in Nepal? And then I got this really cool opportunity because I was working with this one Nepalese organization. I was invited by them to join an exclusive winter expedition. So you have these people that like to climb extreme high mountains, and then you have these people that like to climb an extreme high mountain in an extreme condition, which is wintertime, which is beyond me why people want to do that. But it was really fascinating to see because I went during Christmas and New Year's. I went to Annapurna one, a mountain, also one of the 8,000ers, pretty deadly mountain because mostly of avalanche risk. And I was able to join this exclusive team of climbers, international climbers and guides and assistants from base camp. And I walked up to halfway camp one with them as well. And I stayed throughout the expedition to just observe everything from up close and be sort of part of the team without having to have the exhaustion and worrying of climbing myself. So I could focus a little bit more on the research. And that was really cool because I got this exclusive insights, and I had all day, every day to just talk with all the staff there and interview them for length of time, which got me really, yeah, special exclusive data, I guess. From that, I went to the Manaslu region. By now, I was super acclimatized, right? So I took every opportunity as well to be out in the mountains because I felt great, and hike and paraglide where I could as well, because, well, you cannot be working every day. So some days I took off and then I went paragliding and just took my mind off climbing to later on refocus on the research. So after Manaslu, which is a different kind of area in Nepal because it's not dominated by the Sherpa ethnicity, but by others. So you saw different types of cultural traditions they have there, which is really, for me, really cool to see as well. To get a better overview of what this whole country and their mountain culture is about. After Manaslu, it was already almost time to go to Everest. Because I decided, well, if you're going to do research about gender in extreme mountaineering, you need to be at Everest, right? That's the highest mountain in the world. Everybody knows it. That's where most people are climbing as well. So I had to be there. And what I did, to me, was, I think, one of the most special parts of my research. Because again, it was kind of exclusive and yet also very normal. I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but I went to Mount Everest. I went to base camp way before the start of the climbing season. This meant that I was there at the end of March already, when it would just still be a normal glacier, like an empty glacier with lots of moraine, lots of ice, lots of nothingness besides beauty of the mountain. And I was there when most of the mountain workers started building this whole village that in a couple of weeks is the home of about 2,000 people for the season, right? It was fascinating to be there and to really, yeah, be part of the working life of, I have to say, all guys out there in pretty extreme, harsh conditions. Yeah, and I got to see that for about 3 weeks. There was nothing there. It was just us and chipping away at the glacier, making it into a village, into plateaus where we could pitch tents, in building routes, like actual path to walk on, which yeah, to me was really fascinating. Before slowly people, and what I mean by people's international climbers mostly, coming in, and you quickly forget about that you are on an actual moving glacier when you have all these luxuries around you. That was really cool to see. I stayed there until the end of the season, really the end of the season, when the last summit window was over and almost everybody was luckily back down. And when I just also saw they were moving the whole village again. So I saw the full cycle of this short Everest season. And I really got to see in detail what that means for somebody dependent on seasonal work out there, like, and what kind of conditions they need to work. What, because of my study, I'm interested in the norms and the behaviors and the expectations they set for themselves, how they keep them in place, how they interact with one another. It's all about human behavior. Yeah, and I got to see that up close and personal, because when you're out there, yeah, there's also no way out, right? So I was sort of stuck there myself as well. It's not like, oh, I did research during the day and, oh, hey, it's 5 p.m., let's go back to my hotel. No, there's nothing like that. So I was in it for the full of it. That was really, yeah, really special.
Did you also conduct interviews at Camp 2 and Camp 3 on Everest?
I didn't go to Camp 3. I went halfway up to Camp 3. Then there's this point, it's what we call the crampon point. So when people are walking so I did climb from base camp to Camp 1 and to Camp 2. So I also went to the Khumbu, through the Khumbu. And then I stayed for a little over a week at Camp 2. I tried to conduct full interviews there. However, to be honest, not a lot of people were willing to have an interview with me up there because it's just too exhausting for everybody, right? Which I understand, which is totally fine. Everybody is trying to survive out there and focus on climbing and not so much about me and my research. However, since I was there for so many days in a row, I saw a lot of things. I joined in with breakfast times, dinners, people taking off. I saw a lot of rescue operations already. I would be hanging out in the kitchen most of the time as well, because again, I focus mostly on the mountain workers. So not so much interviews there. At base camp, I did many, many interviews.
Did you manage to speak to some women?
Women working, you mean?
Well, women climbing, and I think
Women climbing, yeah.
yeah, but
Yes.
women working, I don't think that
Yeah.
not really a thing?
Yes and no. So yes, I did too, which is that I love about women and our community as well, right? So once somebody found out I was at base camp for my research, with social media, with internet access nowadays, and Everest Base Camp as well, I would be invited to a lot of other camps too. There's about like 15 to 20 companies there, and if they would have a woman as a client in their camp, I was sure to be invited for a dinner there to have a conversation with those women because they all reached out to me. That was really, really cool. So yeah, I met some of the more famous climbers that I was able to interview, which I cannot tell any names of people I interviewed because everything is anonymous. But if you wish to look up who climbs Everest in 2025, you can also from there distill who I interviewed. But almost all the women that were able to have a full conversation with me in either Dutch or English, right? I don't speak any other languages. So it was, if they were willing to do those, then yes. So for the climbers, absolutely. Mountain workers, there are some international women, and by that I mean non-Nepali women working at base camp, mostly for Western companies. So for some Western companies, there would be a woman as a cook, for example, or a physiotherapist working at Everest as well, or a doctor. From the Nepali side, there was one woman as an assistant guide from 8K. She was very open about everything and talking to me. She even broadcasted it on her own Instagram. So that's why I'm able to say this. So, yes, I was able to interview her as well. For the rest, there were no other women. No.
When you came back and were starting to go through, I suppose, your research, have you been able to pull any lessons, any learnings, anything that you're going to be sharing or that you can share with us about from what you've learned from spending time in the mountains?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, right? I like to make the joke that I have a mountain of data right now, which really is.
Good joke.
It's a nerd joke, but hey, I'm studying to be a nerd, but there's just so much. And because I'm doing this deeply qualitative work, which is really cool when you go out in the field because you're not limited that much. You don't have hypothesis, you don't have to tick off some survey question. No, you go out there with an open view. But then when you come back, a lot of the hard work starts because then you need to distill like reflexively, like, okay, what were the main themes? What do I really see right now? What's the crux here? And the way I went about it was mostly talking to my supervisors over and over and over again. I had to explain to them, okay, what did my own climbing expedition of Amada Blum, how did it look like? What did I went through? What were some surprising things? What was really mundane and normal that you don't tell us but still happened? And like to go over this all the time helped me voicing what really happened. And so my PhD is will be based on 3 articles. And for my first article, I am doing a discourse analysis, and that means that I looked at basically 100 years of expedition reports. And I say 100 years because when I started the PhD, it was 100 years ago when Mount Everest was first climbed. So that seems like a really cool window to talk about, right? And from those expedition reports, I try to uncover where gender norms got a hold of themselves within those 100 years and how does that look like and what do we know about it and how can I identify them? That's study 1, study 2, and 3 are about my own months in the Himalaya. And right now I'm writing a paper about my own experience of climbing Amada Blam. I cannot say the full contribution yet because I'm not there yet. However, it has to do with how we try to make sense of events happening when things go wrong. So I look at the theory of sense making, which is a widely used management theory. Organizational studies use it a lot as well. Businesses, it's about decision making. It's about setting strategies, and how we deal with things. And I look at how this process itself is hugely gendered. That means that how we deal with uncertainty, how we deal with things happening on the mountain is gendered. We look at things in a gendered way. I like to make this clarification that I do not study the difference between men and women. Not at all. Gender happens everywhere in every interaction with people, and it therefore also happens in a group of only women, in a group of only men, and in mixed groups. It's everywhere. So, and since I focus mostly on the mountain workers, I study mostly men interacting with each other, right? And from there, you can also see different patterns of gender, and they can in itself go to the extreme. And then what I see in my paper now is that this mountaineering industry is not only extreme in terms of physiology in the nature we're in and the conditions and the environment, but it's also really extreme in terms of masculinity. And again, that doesn't mean that because there's men, there's masculinity. No, absolutely not. It means that the mountaineering industry has a set of norms and behaviors that normalize hegemonic masculine rationality, which we also see in popular media, right? We see in popular accounts of books, documentaries, movies about mountaineering. It's all heroic. It's all about survival. It's all about toughening up, surviving extreme cold and things like that. It's super heroic, but that's also a very masculine way of looking at the mountain, almost covering up all the other rationalities that are going on. I mean, do we know of many movies where people said halfway on the mountain, like, hey, it's not safe, let's turn around? I don't think so. They're not that popular, right? That's not the story that people want to hear, want to see. However, that is very much the reality. So what am I trying to say with this is that this gendered way of looking at the practices we have in mountaineering really harms the safety and the expression of certain type of emotions, the expression of certain types of anxiety, fears, doubts, and impairs your decision making, because we kind of want to uphold this whole heroic sense of mountaineering as it should be. Like the summit above all else is in 2025, 2026, still very much what we like to hear from mountaineering.
Or is that like conquering narrative of like going out to conquer the mountains?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right, because we use a lot of military language as well. We're going to conquer it. We're going to attack the mountain. Today, we're going to defeat it. And we need to be fast. We're going to make it. We're going to turn it. And that oftentimes it's actually harmful. When you're up the mountain, you need to have so much respect for all the things that can go wrong, because honestly, you don't have much control. The mountain is boss, right? She decides what's happening.
Yeah. I think it's also really interesting, or one thing that I've noticed from interviewing women and listening to podcasts, specifically, I suppose, with regard to storytelling, is I notice such a difference in how men communicate and share their adventures and challenges, and how women communicate and share their adventures and challenges. And what I see is it's to sometimes men, it's like what they've done, how they've done it, how they've got from A to B, what the risks were, how they overcame it, again, along that heroic risk survival
Absolutely.
narrative. And then with women, I think how women share, it comes across as that sort of, it's that internal journey. Like, what were the fears I had to overcome? Like, what were the lessons that I learned along the way? Like, how did I manage, like, self doubt? How did I grow and develop as a person? How did I develop skills to get to that point where I feel comfortable and safe and really ready to take on the challenge and the adventure? So or I almost see it as very sort of, yeah, distinct ways of sharing. And so it's for women, from what I see, it's almost like it's not that it's not that conquering narrative. It's a journey, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense. And in itself, this is an example of the construct, right? We allow women to tell the story in this way more than we allow men. Because, or not because, but yeah, because the rules are this way, because that's what we expect. And what I find interesting in my research, since I have this focus on the mountain workers, the men working in this industry, I also find it very important to emphasize that men are as much part and limited by this construct as women are. So where we say like women are always seen, and you don't see it, but I say quote unquote, always seen as emotional, hysterical, they're weak, they should not take all these risks on the mountains. Those are norms we still hold strongly today, which is fascinating to me. But the same counts for men. They are really not at liberty to show their vulnerability. For example, if one of the porters, one of the high altitude porters, meaning one of those guys that's carrying up all your gear, if he says, I'm not feeling very well, then he's replaced tomorrow and he's out of a job. Like, that's wrong. That doesn't allow him to be vulnerable and to be human, basically. Same for caretaking. You are in a tent together and you have to deal with one another. You have to take care of one another. It's not you as a climber paying a mountain guide and he needs to deal whatever you're dealing with. No, you should be a team. And he can also get sick because mountain sickness can hit everybody all the time. And there's still a huge stigma on men to allow themselves other ways of behaving as well. And I
Yeah.
find that's really sad.
It's also made me think as well, as I remember having, so it's almost like the way that women are allowed to communicate is they can share this, this internal journey. But then if they share in what would be, I suppose, the traditional masculine way of, going out almost like, and it's not saying that women can't do this, but that's like that confidence, being really confident when they sound the start line, yeah, I'm going to smash this, I'm going to destroy this, I'm going to da 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 da. Then that can almost be uncomfortable for other women to hear because it's like, oh, like, should she be that confident? I'm not sure that I like this. It's almost like the opposite side of, men being vulnerable. It's like women being allowed to be seen as confident or arrogant or but not seen in a negative way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, women tend to be extra tough on other women. We know this from research as well. There's this mom police, for example, going on, but there's also because we are being, how do you say this, influenced by all these ideas of how we should behave from a very young age on. It starts basically the day after you're born because it's everywhere around you. So it's really hard if you see another woman behaving towards a standard that you're not used to. It's easier then to criticize that because she is confronting you with your uncertainties. Maybe I make assumptions now, but or he's at least mirroring something that you're not used to, and it's easier to tackle that down than to motivate that. And I don't know why that is. I mean, that's not what I'm studying, but that fascinates me as well. And the same again counts for men, because if in a big group of men a very homogeneous, masculine, tough guy group. One is exposing different behavior. He, for example, starts to cry or starts to shiver because it's cold. He's also seen as weak. Those are perfect examples of this construct of gender that I found in the mountains time and again. And quite funny, I am studying this, right? So I think about this all the time, and my friends get really annoyed by me because I see it everywhere all the time. So I make comments about it. However, even when I was on the mountain, I tended to endure and follow along in the super hegemonic masculine rationality that was out there as well. I could not resist it either. So one of my papers really about these reflexive questions. Okay, what happened on the mountain and why? Because something went wrong. And then one day you're going to read my paper and then you get what I'm saying right now. But then it was like something went wrong in our descent. And that was based on decision making. And it also had to do because I didn't voice my concerns. I also thought like, well, it's kind of, let's not be weak. Okay, I guess this is the way we do it. But there were so many safety concerns that I had because I am used to a different way of climbing. I used to a different way of alpine style climbing that I trained myself in Europe, right, with the European standards, and it was super different from what I saw on that mountain. So I really knew what I was doing was unsafe, but I still wasn't able to voice it. And that is how strong that masculine rationality can be.
And Gabby, where are you most active on social media? How can people connect with you, find out more about your work? Where should they go?
There are some videos of me on TikTok, which is funny because I am not, but there's this thing called Everest Live that's doing broadcasts about Mount Everest. And last year they were there too. So they interviewed me. You can find that. However, I have decided to restrain myself from social media, except for LinkedIn. LinkedIn I use, so I will publish stuff there about my research. So everybody who's interested, please reach out or send me an email if you want me to talk about my research. I'm always happy to do. But yeah, that's it for me for social media because I'd rather be outside than online.
I was going to say, and you've got papers to write as well. You can't be doom scrolling on social media,
Absolutely. You're so right. Yeah. And it takes, I mean, it's
and
the
you don't want it rotting your brain either. You worked hard on all the knowledge that you've put in there.
absolutely. And because I was there for such a long time, everything I see now on social media or the mainstream media reporting on Everest, I really need to keep myself grounded, not to call up my national news broadcast like, hey, that's wrong information. Like, that's not the way you should portray it. But then okay, that's not my business. Yeah.
Gabby, I'd love to know, I'd love for you to leave us with your final words of advice, words of wisdom for other women who either want to pursue, doing a PhD, or they want to pursue their interests, or, for like getting outside in extreme environments, to encourage them to go and climb the mountains, to take action, to follow their passions and interests. Apart from just do it, what advice would you like to share?
Yeah, that's awesome because there's so many women already that are doing it. And I find that those women who made it out to, for example, the 8,000ers, those big, big mountains, they are so happy to get in touch with you. So even if you just send them a DM or an email or buy one of their books and then email them about their books, like, they are what I found so willing to talk to you and help to hype you up and get you started in mountaineering. So instead of just do it, which everybody says, yes, I agree. But if you need some encouragement, just talk to those women. They're women just like you and me, and they are really happy to get you started with you. So I think yeah, they are living the life that you might inspire. Then just ask them for some advice, and they're happy to give it to you.
Absolutely. Reach out, connect, ask for that advice. And I also agree they will be willing to give it to you. Gabby, thank you so much for coming on Tough Girl Podcast to share more about your passion and love for the mountains and also the amazing research that you're doing into gender in the extreme mountaineering environments. I can't wait till your papers are published.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always lovely to talk to like-minded people and especially to get some attention to my research. Thank you very much.
Hey, tribe. I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Gaby. I love women researchers, women going after their PhDs, studying, following their passions, following their interests. I think it's absolutely amazing. You may know that many years ago, actually back in 2017, as Tough Girl Challenges was starting to take off, I was in a similar position where I wanted to understand more about women. And I ended up going back to university, back to Lancaster to study for a master's in women and gender studies. So I love this whole like gender as a social construct. It was bringing back thoughts and ideas of, gosh, that was a long time ago, 6, 7, like from not, no, God. Yeah, like 9 years ago when I was studying that. So obviously I have forgotten quite a bit of it, but I'm still obviously very interested in women and gender and what's going on. So talking about mountaineering, I just want to do a special shout out to a previous podcast guest that we've had on the show, which is the lovely Rosemary J. Brown. Now, Rosemary first came on the podcast on December 2nd, 2021. I'm just going to share a little bit more about what she discussed during the episode and then the reason for the shout out. So Rosemary J. Brown, working to get female adventurers back on the map and the author of Following Nellie Bly. So this is Rosemary in her own words talking about Nellie Bly and her record-breaking race around the world. Crusading journalist Nellie Bly jumped off the page at me. She appeared as I was researching Victorian women adventurers and she wouldn't go away. The more I got to know her, the more I was intrigued by this spirited woman who wouldn't take no for an answer, despite living in a world where women knew their place. Nellie knew her place all right, smack dab on the front page of the world's newspapers. She pioneered investigative journalism and paved the way for female reporters like Rosemary. Nellie's crusades in print brought about huge reforms in women's asylums, sweatshops and prisons. 2015 marked the 125th anniversary of her best-known adventure, circling the globe in a record-breaking 72 days. In celebration of the remarkable Nellie Bly and her amazing journey, I followed in her footsteps around the world. Now, there is a book chronicling their two journeys, following Nellie Bly, her record-breaking race around the world. My aim is to put Nellie back on the map as an inspiration for adventure and reminder that, as Nellie said, nothing is impossible if one applies a certain amount of energy in the right direction. So I had the pleasure of interviewing Rosemary back on December 2nd, 2021, where she came on the Tough Girl podcast, where she shared more about all of the research that she's been doing, her life in journalism, wanting to get contemporary female explorers on the map, about following your dreams and stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's a really wonderful episode and I'd highly encourage you to go and listen to it. But the reason for the shout out, on August 13th, Rosemary released her next book and it is called Moving Mountains, Intrepid Women Climbers and the Peaks Named in Their Honour, which is absolutely amazing. I'm just going to read you a little bit more about Moving Mountains. So Moving Mountains celebrates the extraordinary women who reach the pinnacles of exploration and are immortalised in destinations named after them. It reveals for the first time a small group of exceptionally daring women who, against all odds, achieved an honour usually reserved for men and royalty. Blazing trails across the globe and straight through the status quo, they defied convention to achieve the impossible. They left inhibitions at home and travelled through a man's world. What they did had never been done before. Their triumphs are recognised in the names of a scattering of mountains and peaks around the world, from the Alps to the Andes, the Rockies to the Karakoram. Some of you may have heard of British archaeologist and political advisor Gertrude Bell, Japanese mountaineer Junko Tabei. Others are lost in obscurity. Inexhaustible traveller Gertrude Emily Benham, Queen of the Climbers Annie Smith Peck, and more. These are the women you are about to meet. So Rosemary, I just want to say a massive congratulations on your latest book. I'm so proud of you. Moving Mountains, Intrepid Women Climbers and the Peaks Named in Their Honour. So this book was launched on the 13th of August. I am currently out on the GR5 at the moment, walking from Holland to Nice. So I haven't been able to get Rosemary on the podcast yet. But when I am back in October, I will be reaching out to Rosemary to get her on the podcast to talk more about this incredible work that she is doing to make sure that women's voices and women's achievements aren't left behind. So that book is Moving Mountains, Intrepid Women Climbers and the Peaks Named in Their Honour. Thank you again for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. If you would like to support the work that I do, then please visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, and you can sign up as a monthly or annual patron. It really does make a massive difference having a regular source of income coming in every single month. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all. Give it 110%. Get after it. Go for it. Believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.